Today, we will talk about the expenditure method. The expenditure method is a system for calculating gross domestic product that combines consumption, investment, government spending, and net exports. It says everything that the private sector, including consumers and private firms, and government spend within the borders of a particular country, must add up to the total value of all finished goods and services produced over a certain period of time. This method produces nominal GDP, which must then be adjusted for inflation to result in the real GDP. The expenditure method may be contrasted with the income approach for calculated GDP. Expenditure is a reference to spending. In economics, another term for consumer spending is demand. The total spending, or demand, in the economy is known as aggregate demand. This is why the GDP formula is actually the same as the formula for calculating aggregate demand. Because of this, aggregate demand and expenditure GDP must fall or rise in tandem. The expenditure method is the most widely used approach for estimating GDP, which is a measure of the economy's output produced within a country's borders irrespective of who owns the means to production. The formula for expenditure GDP is GDP equals C plus I plus G plus, where C equals consumer spending on goods and services, I equals investor spending on business capital goods, G equals government spending on public goods and services, X equals exports, and M equals imports. In the United States, the most dominant component in the calculations of GDP under the expenditure method is consumer spending, which accounts for the majority of U.S. GDP. Consumption is typically broken down into purchases of durable goods, non-durable goods, and services. The second component is government spending, which represents expenditures by state, local and federal authorities. Business investment is one of the most volatile components that goes into calculating GDP. The last component included in the expenditure approach is net exports, which represents the effect of foreign trade of goods and service on the economy. The income approach to measuring gross domestic product is based on the accounting reality that all expenditures in an economy should equal the total income generated by the production of all economic goods and services. The major distinction between each approach is its starting point. The expenditure approach begins with the money spent on goods and services. Conversely, the income approach starts with the income earned from the production of goods and services. GDP, which can be calculated using numerous methods, including the expenditure approach, is supposed to measure a country's standard of living and economic health. Critics caution that GDP should not be taken as an all-encompassing indicator of a society's well-being, since it ignores important factors that make people happy. For example, while GDP includes monetary spending by private and government sectors, it does not consider work-life balance or the quality of interpersonal relationships in a given country. Here are 4 key takeaways. 1. The expenditure method is the most common way of calculating a country's GDP. 2. This method adds up consumer spending, investment, government expenditure, and net exports. 3. Aggregate demand is equivalent to the expenditure equation for GDP in the long run. 4. The alternative method to calculate GDP is the income approach. Hope this would help. Thanks for watching.